Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I am the Crypto Crow, and today we're going to talk about, is the bull market over? Is it dead? Is crypto dead? Is it, like, what's happening with the market? You know, it gets really stressful when you're looking at your portfolio and you're watching everything just continue to go down, and it doesn't make any sense. And you're kind of trying to figure out, what is happening? Am I going broke? Listen, I'm crypto rich in the sense that a lot of my capital is tied up into the crypto market right now, to the point where, like, I get concerned because if things were to go south or something dramatically unexpected were to happen and I wasn't able to pull my funds out or do anything, I would probably be in a really big pickle. Okay. So I feel your pain, but we're going to look at the charts here and we're going to kind of look at the grand picture. Really, so much, I see this kind of thing, with everything, right? People tend to zoom in, and start focusing on very small things. And they let those really small details dictate the overall narrative of what's going on, whether it be politically or scientifically or whatever. We have a tendency of doing that, but especially when it comes to crypto, you have to zoom out. So we're going to look at this logarithmic chart here, and I want to point out some very strong similarities between what's happened in the past and what's happening now. If we look back here at 2013, this is like April of 2013, we can see that, we got a bit of a pickup, right? So between the time that Bitcoin, and I don't count this for a lot other than patterns. Okay. This general area here into this first big halving in 2016. But obviously Bitcoin was founded in 2009, and then it started to move itself and the market was moving. But we saw similar patterns. And this is a part of what leads me to believe that there is an algorithmic pattern associated with Bitcoin that many people still haven't figured out yet. And in the middle of its inception to its first market peak, we got this pickup where we started to break into the red and came back down, and then moved all the way back up and peaked out in December of 2013. So I just want to keep note of this number one here. Then we move forward into the halving. Okay. The first halving, and this was in 2016. And I don't know if that was the first halving. I didn't calculate that out. But I know that this halving in 2016 was the first big one that really mattered. And if we look at this peak to the 2017 peak in December, what we see is a 1,470-day period, peak to peak. And this is with the halving in the middle. From the halving to the peak, it was roughly about 511 days. Now, this is a weekly chart. This is a weekly candle on a logarithmic scale. Now, from the 2017 peak, we obviously came all the way down into the blue where we bottomed out. This is around when I did that first big seminar in I think 2018. I think this was when I'm pretty sure this is when I did the first big seminar where I put a bunch of money into trying to educate people in Cincinnati, and nobody cared. Bitcoin was like $4,000 at the time, and I was trying to tell everybody, you got to get involved, you got to learn, you got to do this, you got to do that. I had speakers from all over the place, came in, flew in on their own dime, took care of themselves, didn't charge me anything. A big community involvement, and I couldn't get a bunch of people. I think we may have had like 200 people out, right? And I charged like $20 a day for tickets. Like, it was not a cash grab. I just wanted to try and help people understand what was going on. And so we bottomed out there, and then we came back up into the middle of this cycle, which is basically the second of its kind. So basically, it's kind of a mid-cycle pump, if you will. Before we came down, and we came all the way down into the green. And that was a really big time because a lot of people were freaking out. Nobody knew what was happening. Everybody thought, is it over? Are we done? Is crypto dead? Is this a scam? Like, what's happening, right? And it wasn't until, basically March of 2021, April of 2021, which was where we had the first Bitcoin peak of that cycle. And what happened, though, is that if you look back into this cycle, you could almost say, because we crossed over this red logarithmic scale here, this could have been the first peak, this could have been the second peak. Very similar to what happened in 2021. We had the first peak and then the second peak. But from the 2017 peak to the second peak, which was a little higher than the first, that was again about 1,428 days. All right. Between the halving date and that peak was about 560 days. So it was pushed out a little bit. And what we saw in the market was it appears to be a bit of a kind of a consolidation of assets, because this is the point where there's more mainstream interest. More people are starting to perk their heads up and say, what is this all about? We started getting talk of, back here in 2017, this is when like the CME futures market opened, right? And they all claimed like we tamed Bitcoin, right? You remember all those narratives? It was all a bunch of bunk, but they were basically trying to say, look, Wall Street contributors, we did this for you, right? So really, it was just the peak of the market cycle, and they knew that, but they were creating their own narrative to try and make people believe that they had more power than they actually did. That's my belief anyway. And if you were to look at this with the pi cycle, the pi cycle shows you where the crossovers were, right? So we got this crossover about here. And that actually does not line up right, because this shows the crossover as in like January 2021. So I need to look at that. And then this other crossover looks like, where is it? So we had the green. Yeah, I don't know. That's out of whack. I'm not sure what's up with that. I'm going to have to check a different indicator, because that's not right, at least on a weekly. So anyway, we're going to take a look at where we're at now. So between the halving and this peak, it's about 560 days. Now, what do we have here? We have the mid-cycle pump. Now, this mid-cycle pump generally happens a little sooner, but this is because, in my opinion, this is because we had so many people waiting to see if these ETFs launched that people were kind of sidelining. They were waiting to see what was going to happen with these Bitcoin ETFs. Were we actually going to get them? And the reason why it was different this time than the times in the past is because we always had all of these other groups say, we're going for a Bitcoin ETF, right? But it wasn't until BlackRock said, we're going for our Bitcoin ETF, that everybody said, this is going to happen. They've been turned down, I think, 3 times out of like 550 different ETF proposals. We all know that BlackRock has a big relationship with the government and with all these different people. I mean, they control a significant portion of the world's corporate interests. We'll just say that. And so we knew that this was going to be very different. And of course, lo and behold, they got their ETF approved, which then opened the floodgates for others to follow suit. And we were all waiting for that because we expected it to happen. Once BlackRock threw their name in the mix, we knew that things were going to start changing. And so we got this pump before the halving, which has never happened before. But a lot of that was because of the inflows of these ETFs. Now we're starting to get paper money going into Bitcoin ETFs through VanEck, through like BlackRock's fund. I can't even remember what its name is, BitFi or something. I don't even remember what it's called. But there were like 12 or 13, I think, different Bitcoin ETFs that started basically entering the market and being able to basically put, retirement funds, all these different like papered accounts, 401k money could go into these ETFs now. So we started to see some of that growth. But we still are in a market cycle. I believe algorithmically, whether it's the way Bitcoin is algorithmically traded in high frequency trading bots, I don't really know yet. I have not cracked the code, but I know that there is something to the way Bitcoin's markets fluctuate in such a predictable fashion, at least until, I'm going to hazard a guess, 2030. Because I'm seeing changes in the patterns and how the time frames continue to evolve. But from this halving to that peak, it was 560 days. If we look at where we're at right now, we're basically settling on this pre-market pump. If you look at this pre-market pump, this number 2, you can see we dropped all the way back down into the green. If we were to do that from here, that would likely put us somewhere in the $20-something thousand range. Do I think we're going to go that far? I don't. Anything is possible, but I don't. Does that mean that crypto would be dead if that were the case? No. But one of the reasons why I don't see that happening is because of the buy pressure that would be basically put into action if that were to happen. Because what's happening right now is that we have all these people with an interest in crypto getting into the Bitcoin market, and they're able to do so with so many different accounts now and so many different investment vehicles that weren't possible before. Gone are the days of people having to basically set up a Bitcoin wallet and learn how to handle all of that and deal with all that to be able to get a Bitcoin position. They can do it through these ETFs, and they are. But if we were to look at the market from the last peak to where I propose the next peak may come, you're looking at, let's just call it 449 days. This would take us to basically early November, end of October. So end of October, early November of 2025. And if we look at the price, once we break out of this logarithmic red, you can see we moved up about 67% outside of this red line here, okay, before we peaked. Over here, we did something similar. We peaked out about 55%. If we did something similar, let's just say we did 50, let's just say 50%. Let's just say that, the diminishing returns and all that fun stuff. But let's just say we got to 50%. That would still take us to a roughly $230,000 Bitcoin by the peak of this market cycle in roughly October, November. And that's basically it. I mean, no, the Bitcoin isn't dead. We've seen this multiple times in the past. This is, right now we're just breaking down out of the red area, which we have seen multiple times. The only catalyst that's changed the way the price action in Bitcoin has moved are these ETFs. I believe that these ETFs are playing a big role in the overall consolidation of the market. And that's really it. It sucks to watch, and it sucks because, we've got some time still. Roughly speaking, we have, we have roughly, let's see, how long do we have until maybe we start really moving? Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Okay. So from where we're at right now to the proposed peak, we still have over a year. I mean, that sucks, right? Because generally speaking, it's roughly like the last 6 months of a bull cycle that we start really seeing those parabolic runs. I mean, I think Cardano went from like 2 cents to $3 in the last cycle in less than 6 months. So this means that we're going to have some more sideways consolidation. We could break down here and touch on this blue line, and we could go as low. Let's see, because what I did was I calculated this based off of the proposed progression, which actually that might even be a little low. The progression may be something like that, at which point taking that 30%, it would take us to around $240,000 Bitcoin by the peak of the market. But we could do something like this before we see that. Well, we got to find my tools here. Where's my painter tools? We could do path. All right. So we could potentially do something like this where we come down, we move sideways, we touch down on this, and then we start running up. Okay. And I don't use these tools very often. We can delete that. All right. But you get the drift. We could do some sideways movement, come down, touch on this blue like we did here. But we did already do that, though. But we also did it twice here. So, technically speaking, this didn't quite hit. This wasn't low enough. but the point is that you're seeing a lot of the same patterns play out in Bitcoin. But in the grand scale, if you just zoom out, you can see we're not done. And this is all very much normal. This is very much typical of the Bitcoin price, having to halving, peak to peak. This is really nothing new. The only thing that I feel is different this time is that we're getting more time for consolidation for these ETFs to continue accumulating and taking Bitcoin off the market. And as those ETFs are taking this Bitcoin off of the exchanges, taking it out of circulation, that is ultimately what is going to become a catalyst for this $240,000 Bitcoin. And by that very nature, if you then want to take a $240,000 Bitcoin, multiply that and establish the market capitalization. So let's just say, here, we can work it up on the fly right now. So let's just call it $230,000. So a $230,000 Bitcoin times, we'll just call it 20 million and be, whatever. I think there's like 19.5 million. So that is going to give us a $4.6 trillion, and that's based on current price and current sentiment, right? But a $230,000 Bitcoin would give us about a $4.6 trillion market cap. All right. So that's cool. What happens there is if you want to look at your altcoin market, what happens with the altcoins? Well, from there, you're going to take that $4.6 trillion market cap and you're going to, and it's actually, that could be very much a real thing. I think it actually could go higher than that, but we'll see. But a $4.6 trillion market cap, then you look at dominance, because once we start peaking, then the Bitcoin dominance starts to fall. And then that money starts spilling into the last big parabolic pumps of the altcoin market. And typically like the top 50, top 100 of the altcoin market, they start getting all of that capital pumping those up. So you almost, those in the know, they're holding their Bitcoin all the way up to the peak, and then they sell into the altcoins, and then the altcoins start to peak out, a couple months after the Bitcoin peak does. And that's going to be based on dominance. The dominance of Bitcoin is going to drop as the dominance of some of these altcoins continue to rise. That's how you ultimately calculate the potential peak for the altcoins, and I do that a lot. I've done that with Cardano, where it seems like no matter what I do, I end up on somewhere around an $8 Cardano price. But it really just kind of depends on the dominance of the token at the time. That's going to be dictated by the community and what's available on it, what it's doing, what it's done, what it's accomplished, how much do people believe in that project and so forth. So that's it. I mean, is the Bitcoin market done? No. Is crypto dead? No. None of those things are happening. It's just a very frustrating time because this takes a long time to play out. And we could potentially go even lower from here, which is really going to hurt. It's really going to burn. But this is nothing compared to what we've seen much bigger moves in the past. I mean, to give you an example, just in this past market, we basically had this mid-market pump. We wicked all the way down 72% from that peak. So to put that into perspective, if we were to do something like that here, let's say this was the pre-market peak, 72%, that would take us down to like $18,000 from here. That sucks. But I don't really see that happening. Okay. I really don't see that happening because there would be too much buy pressure at that point, because the difference between here and here is now we have institutions. Now we have all of these major whales, major players, basically, confirming Bitcoin is the thing. We've got countries like El Salvador that's buying a Bitcoin every day for their own uses. There's just so much happening in the market that's telling people that the value of Bitcoin is much higher than this. So if we were to just drop back down into the 40s, or maybe we even touched into the mid 30s, that is going to be such a buying opportunity for people that are expecting this big pump and this big run over the next year or less. that the buy pressure would keep that price from falling too much lower. But that's just my personal opinion, and I'm always right sometimes. So that's it for today. I just wanted to touch base and give you guys a little bit of clarity on what is going on, and hopefully put some of your minds at ease as to what to expect. Until next time, crow your coins. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.